So this morning I was chatting with a fellow fishing YouTuber, and we were talking a little bit about like drift fishing. And man, drift fishing is a deadly way of catching fish. It's not at all the same as bobber fishing. There's a lot of differences as far as how to rig it up. So I'm gonna put this to you guys. If you guys are interested in doing this, put in the comments like your opinion on everything I'm going to talk about here. So I want to know, like, all those, especially, you know, there's so many ways of doing this. I'd like to hear everybody else's ways of doing this. I'll tell you what I think and maybe some of the why, and then you guys, I'd like to have you guys jump in, make this kind of a community effort to figure this out. So start off with, obviously, like most old guys like me, I learned catching steelhead by drift fishing before we started using bobbers and stuff like that. So basically, you'd have your main line and you'd tie it up to some kind of a swivel, something that attaches to some weight, and then you have anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe even longer, 2 to 5 feet a leader, depending on how you're fishing and whatnot. But that's the main deal. And then you have a hook with some eggs, or like a yarny, a little corky and yarn, something like that. So so why did the industry start using like bobbers? So that's the why. So start using bobbers. The main reason I started that was because when you're drifting, you're side drifting, you're not, unless you're in a boat where you're just drifting straight down river, that's literally bobber fishing, because your boat's being your bobber. The whole point of the bobber is to keep your line going straight so that you're not going at a curved or an angle. When you do the curve and the angle, you're kind of swinging it, kind of like when you hear the term swinging flies. Well, that's what's happening down underneath the bottom of the river. You're swinging all of that gear straight down river, but also sideways, like towards your own side of the bank. And normally that's very effective. The risk that you're running is getting snagged up on the bottom, because you might you'll either swing your weight and get it pinched between a boulder and the bottom, or maybe your weight goes on one side of the boulder and your hook and all your corky and all that go on the other side of the boulder. Hence, you get snagged up. You either pull your line free of it and then have to straighten your hooks and resharpen your hooks. Maybe you got a bent hook, all that, you know, or you might break off, or you might ruin your leader and have to retie. So there's lots of reasons that you don't want to swing your gear. And that's why the bobber is so heavily used now, because you don't get hung up on the bottom nearly as much, because it's going straight down river. You have a lot less chance of part of your gear going on one side of the boulder and part of your gear going on the other side of the boulder, which prevents a lot of snagging, a lot of frustration. A lot of people learn a lot of swear words when they're out fishing, and that happens. So anyway, that's the main reason of switching away from that. For those that are still interested in what I'm talking about, here we go. I'm going to pose a question, and that is, now that the world has discovered how much more effective it can be to bobber in eggs or bobber fish beads, whatnot, why do people still drift fish versus just sticking with the bobbers? What's the reasoning behind drift fishing, and why did they do that? And here's what my theory is with a bobber and eggs, you have a lot of valuable, expensive gear, so you want to protect it. So in order to do that, you might want to use a little heavier line so that you don't lose your bobber, you don't lose your main weight. So in that case, somebody might be using 40, 50 60-pound test on their main line, and then they've got it tied to some swivel that's not going to mess up, and they're not going to lose all that gear. Now there's a negative to using heavier, bigger diameter line, all that kind of stuff. That's why you're always trying to go small diameter. The negative is that it's hard to get down in deeper water into the region where the fish are going to be biting. Okay, so keep that in mind. So you get a guy that's drift fishing, all he's got is like 30 cents worth of weight, another 30 cents on a hook, and then whatever little bit of yarn he's got. So he's invested about $1 into everything from his main line down. Okay, when that's the case, who cares if he breaks off? He's not going to have to worry about having the most like heavy duty line. He's not trying to protect from losing that gear, and he's able to get away with fishing the very minimum amount of line to get down there and catch a fish. You know, steelhead you can catch on 12-pound tests. Pretty much any fish, any steelhead you could probably catch on 15. So if somebody were to want to put just mono, like 15-pound mono to their main line, that'll catch fish all day long, and you won't break off because 15-pound test is usually enough. And hey, what if you do break off? No biggie, just retie another 40 to 80 cents worth of gear, and you're fishing again. Okay, now the whole point I'm talking about this is you want to be able to cut through the water with the smaller line diameter, something that'll sink good, get down where you want to be. And then when you get down there, you don't want to run through them super fast, and you want to get down and bump the bottom. So my number one reason that I would use a drift fishing gear instead of bobber, and this would be on really deep water, not super slow water, like medium water to maybe even fast water, but super deep. And here's why. Because I want to get my gear down to the bottom, and I want to have a little bit of control about how fast it rips through the hole. And if you have a bobber hooked all your gear, you're still going to get down there, but then you're dealing with whether or not it's slowing down enough. And you can get a lot slower presentation with drifting in a deep hole that's medium to fast water. So there you go. That's my number one reason to do it. If you're fishing, 3 feet to 6 feet, even up to 8 feet of water, yeah, you can still drift fish it, but in that situation, you have a lot of advantage by using bobber with all your setup. So the only reason I would go is if it's six feet and up, 6 to 14, 6 to whatever feet deep. That's when you definitely want to use drift fishing, because then you can send it down, it'll go all the way to the bottom, and you don't have to worry about bobber adjustment. You don't have any adjustment. You're just letting it drag the bottom, and it's going up and down, and it's following the contour of the bottom the whole time. So that is probably the most effective way to fish for any steelhead or salmon, is by drift fishing, because it's always right down there in the strike zone. And if it's not, it's just a matter of adjusting your weights to tune that to where it belongs by basically adjusting your weight a little bit. So that's your reason why you drift fish. But again, like I said, if you're getting into those boulder patches, or maybe it's all about the different type of terrain that you're fishing in. If you're just fishing like big beds of gravel that are 8 to 12 feet deep, man, you're drift fishing the whole time. You're not getting into any bobbers or any of that stuff. And it's fun to feel that bite. So I hope that helps. This is my opinion. I'm sure there's a lot more to it. There's a lot to do with drift fishing versus bobber fishing, based off of higher water than normal versus low water than normal. So tell us what you think. I'm curious if you got any input on this. A lot of you guys out there, all the viewers, are reading the comments. If you're not reading the comments, I don't know what's the matter with you. You should be. So get on board. If you're not tech savvy, probably old like me, have your kids or your grandkids teach you how to find those comments and read them, because there's a lot of great input from all of you out there that are good fishermen. Read those comments, learn from your fellow fishermen, your fellow Automagic adventurers out there. So hopefully next time I am yapping at this video, it's going to be me at the beach getting ready to go out in the ocean and using my big old waders. Woo-hoo! Got some waders that go up to my shoulders almost. Got some good boots. So I'm going to go out there and just explore the ocean a little bit. Probably stop at a couple tackle shops on the way and make sure I got everything I need. But anyways, see you guys soon.